My sister announced she was pregnant with triplets and needed a bigger house. My parents told me to do the honor. I stood up, said I was moving out, and selling the house they were living in as well. I'm 29 and I make my living as a streamer out of Austin. Gaming commentary, the occasional, let's talk about family rant that my chat swears is better than Netflix. 3 weeks ago on Thanksgiving, my sister Serena stood up with a glittery cider glass like she was accepting an award and announced, "I'm pregnant with triplets and you're buying me a bigger house." My mom clapped like Serena had just cured an illness. My dad nodded like this was already written into the Constitution. I said, "Congratulations." Serena walked around the table and handed me a set of keys like she was passing out party favors. "Start looking this week," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I smiled. "Actually," I said calm as if I was reading donation alerts, "I already found one." Her eyes lit up until I added for me. "I'm moving tomorrow. And the house you're in, I let the last words hang because the truth is a blade. You don't swing it wildly. You place it down and make people step into it." Hours later, when the envelope was opened and the deed was read out loud, everything changed. People always ask how families get like this, like it's a sudden disease. Like one day everyone's normal, and then the next day your sister is assigning you a mortgage like you're her personal assistant. But it's never sudden. It's a pattern so old it stops feeling like abuse and starts feeling like whether something you're expected to dress for. The shared birthday. When I was 8, Serena turned 10, and my parents threw her a party with a bounce house and a magician. They told me we were doing a shared birthday to save money. The cake said Serena in pink frosting with little piped roses. My name wasn't on it. I remember standing next to the table watching candles get lit and asking, "Where's mine?" Mom smiled like I was adorable. "Oh, Max," she said, "don't be flexible, be grateful." I learned early that be flexible meant be invisible. The scholarship that didn't count. In high school, I got a scholarship to a decent college. Not Ivy League, but the kind of thing guidance counselors brag about. I ran into the kitchen waving the letter. Dad glanced at it like it was a grocery receipt. "That's nice," he said. "Serena needs help with her application fees." Mom added, "You're smart. You'll figure it out." Serena didn't even look up from her phone. "You'll probably just drop out and play video games anyway," she said. I laughed like it didn't hurt. Then I went to my room and sat on my bed holding that letter, realizing that even my good news was just a side quest in Serena's storyline. Adult disrespect with a smile. By 24, I was streaming full-time. It wasn't celebrity money, but it was stable. Sponsors, subscriptions, a community that showed up even when I didn't feel like I deserved it. My family called it pretending. At Sunday dinners, Mom would ask, "So are you applying for real jobs yet?" And Serena would laugh and say, "He yells at teenagers for money." Dad would say, "It won't last." And pass the potatoes like that settled it. Then Serena would text me later, "Hey, can you send $300 for my car payment? I'm short." When I didn't reply fast enough, she'd add, "It's not like you work." And if I did send it, she'd respond with a heart emoji like she tipped me. Micro scene number 4. The house that became a leash. 2 years ago, my parents downsized. That's what they told people. What actually happened was Dad's health took a hit. Mom panicked, Serena's rent jumped, and suddenly everyone was talking about family like it was a billing department. "We found a house," Mom said, voice syrupy. "It's perfect for all of us." "All of us?" I asked. Serena chimed in, "It'll be like a family hub, and you're doing so well online. This is a chance for you to invest." I didn't want a hub, I wanted distance, but then Dad called me alone, voice thinner than I'd ever heard. "Your mom's scared." He said, "Serena's Serena, we just need help." I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was being a good son. And because I was the only one with liquid income, I did what I always did. I showed up, I put the down payment on that house. I covered closing costs. I paid the first 6 months of the mortgage while I got my paperwork sorted. Mom cried and said, "You're saving us." Serena hugged me and whispered, "You're finally useful." I laughed, because what else do you do when someone hands you cruelty wrapped in gratitude? And again, the motif, be flexible, be invisible. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, the house had become Serena's stage. She decorated it like a catalog. She posted videos in the kitchen like she owned it. She talked about my home in front of Mom like Mom was staff. I didn't live there full-time. I had an apartment across town. Small, quiet mine, but I paid for the family house because every month Mom would call and say something like, "Your dad's meds got more expensive." Or, "Serena's been stressed. Pregnancy hormones are intense." Or, "We'll pay you back when we can." They never said thank you. They said when we can, the way people say when the weather changes. That November, Serena started dropping hints like breadcrumbs. I can't believe how cramped this place will be, she said, rubbing her stomach dramatically even before she announced anything. Mom would look at the living room and sigh. Triplets need space. Dad would nod. A bigger yard. And I'd sit there thinking, you haven't even confirmed you're pregnant and you're already spending my money. Then came the invitation. Thanksgiving at the house. Big announcement. Mom texted. I almost didn't go. Not out of spite, out of survival. But I went because Dad's voice on the phone had been weaker lately. And I hate the version of myself that abandons people even when they didn't deserve loyalty. I drove over with a pie from a local bakery still warm in the box. I wore a simple sweater, jeans, nothing flashy, because any sign of success makes Serena's eyes sharpen. When I arrived, there were more cars than usual lining the street. Not just family, friends, church people. Serena's support circle. I counted faces as I walked in. 36 people, 36 witnesses. The living room smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey and that specific aggressive scent of new candles trying to cover old resentment. Serena was in a tight dress, hair, perfect makeup, done like she expected a photographer. Her fiancé Kyle stood behind her with a hand on her waist, smiling like a man who'd never had to earn anything but still expected applause. Mom hugged me quick, distracted. Dad patted my shoulder. Serena took the pie, glanced at it, and said, cute, not thank you, cute. I set my coat down and found my seat, or tried to because the place cards weren't subtle. Serena and Kyle were at the head of the table. Mom and Dad beside them, and then the rest of the important guests. Me at the far end near the kids' table like an accessory they didn't want in the pictures. I stared at the card. Max and marker, like even my full name, was too much effort. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat. Don't cry here, not here. I took my seat. Across from me, Aunt Layla, my dad's sister, caught my eye. Layla wasn't loud. She wasn't dramatic. She was the kind of woman who watched everything and forgot nothing. She lifted her glass slightly in a silent salute that felt like, I see it, I see you. My phone buzzed. A text from Layla. You okay? I typed back. I'm fine, just hungry. She responded, eat, observe, don't react. I almost smiled, because that's the thing about people like Serena. They feed on reactions. They want you flailing so they can call you unstable. So I stayed calm. I passed the dishes. I made polite comments about the turkey. I let Serena soak up attention like sunlight, and all the while, I felt something solid in my jacket pocket. A thick, flat envelope. Not a weapon, not a threat. Just paper that told the truth. When it was time for dessert, Serena stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room quieted. Phones came out. Of course they did. Serena smiled wide and practiced. I have something to share, she said. Kyle squeezed her waist. Mom's eyes glittered like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. Dad leaned back satisfied, and I realized something with a clarity that made my stomach settle instead of churn. This is the stage. Serena placed a hand on her stomach like it was holy. We're pregnant, she announced. Cheers, clapping. Someone shrieked. Then she held up 3 fingers with triplets. The room exploded. Mom cried openly. Dad stood to hug her. Kyle beamed like he'd invented reproduction. And then Serena's gaze snapped to me, sharp and bright, like the moment wasn't complete until she made it about control. She lifted her chin. And because we're about to be a family of 5, she said, drawing it out, we obviously can't stay in a house this small. Mom nodded vigorously. Dad made a thoughtful noise. Serena continued, voice sweet as poison. So Maxwell is going to buy us a bigger place. People laughed, uncertain at first, then more confident when Mom clapped like this was the cutest joke in the world. Serena leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, and delivered the line that would replay in my head for days. You're not even a real adult, but you can at least pay for one. A few people gasped. A few laughed harder, relieved someone said what they were thinking. My face didn't change. I felt my heart pounding, but my hands stayed steady on the edge of my plate. I set my fork down. Congratulations, I said again. Serena's smile widened. She walked around the table and pressed a set of keys into my palm. They were warm from her hand. Start looking this week, she said, loud enough for everyone. We need 4 bedrooms minimum and a yard, and I want it close to Mom. Mom clapped again. Dad nodded. Kyle said, we'll send you Zillow links. Serena turned back toward the crowd basking. I looked down at the keys. Then I looked up. Actually, I said, voice even. I already found one. Serena spun back to me so fast her earrings swung. Her eyes lit up greedy and bright. Oh my God, she breathed. You did. Really show me. I smiled. Not fake, not cruel, Just finished. For me, I said. Silence hit like a door slamming. Serena blinked. What, I'm moving, I said. Tomorrow. Mom's smile faltered. Maxwell. Serena laughed like she'd misheard. No, you're not. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the envelope, set it on the table in front of me like a place setting. And the house you're in, I continued, still calm. It's not yours to outgrow. Serena's mouth opened, then closed. Kyle frowned. What is this? Dad's brow creased. Mom's hands hovered midair, unsure whether to clap or grab. I slid the envelope toward the center of the table. Aunt Layla, I said, can you do me a favor? Layla didn't hesitate. She stood, walked over, and picked up the envelope like she'd been waiting for it. What is it? Mom demanded. Layla looked at me. You want me to read it? Yes, I said. Serena stepped forward, voice sharp now. This is insane. Maxwell, stop making everything about you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. This isn't about me, I said. It's about reality. Layla opened the envelope. Inside were copies, clean, official, a deed, a mortgage statement, a trust document. She adjusted her glasses and began. The property address she read is registered too. Serena scoffed. It's Mom and Dad's. Leia kept reading to Maxwell Grant. The room went dead like someone had pulled the sound out by the roots. Mom's face drained. Dad stared at the paper as if it had betrayed him. Serena laughed once, high and brittle. No, she said, that's not true. Kay leaned in. I scanning. Layla continued. Steady. Mortgage is in Maxwell's name. Down payment documented as Maxwell's funds. Payments made by Maxwell's account. Mom's voice came out small. Max, you put it in your name. I looked at her. I had to. I said, because you said it was temporary and you didn't want your credit affected. Dad swallowed. We thought it was a formality. It was protection, I corrected gently. Serena stepped closer, face twisting. You can't do this. You can't kick out a pregnant woman. I held her gaze. You don't get to rewrite what you did to me, I said. You don't get to assign me a life and call it love. Mom's voice rose panicked. Maxwell, honey, we're family. This is the family home. No, I said it's my home. I let you live here. Kyle's jaw clenched. So what? You want applause? You want us to beg? I shook my head. This isn't revenge, I said clear and calm. This is reality. Serena snatched the keys out of my hand like she could reclaim control through metal. Then what is this? She hissed, shaking them. Why do you have keys if you don't live there? I smiled. Because that was the funniest part. I do have keys, I said. And I already used them. Serena froze. Mom's eyes widened. What did you do? I took a breath. I bought a small place, I said. A townhouse, quiet mine. Then I let the last sentence land, slow and sharp. And this house, I added. It's being sold. The reaction wasn't one thing, it was a wave. Voices rising. Someone whispering. Oh my God! A phone camera clicking. Kyle swore under his breath. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Dad stood up, chair scraping. Sold, Dad echoed. Maxwell. I listed it. I said 2 weeks ago. Serena's face turned a kind of furious purple. You can't, she spat. We live here. I know, I said. That's why I gave notice. Mom's voice cracked. You gave notice? I nodded. 30 days, I said. Official paperwork filed. A copy was delivered. Mom turned to Dad, frantic. Did you see anything? Dad looked helpless. Your mother handles the mail. Mom's eyes darted away. Serena's laugh turned into a scream. You're disgusting, she snapped. You're jealous. You're doing this because I'm happy and you're alone. And I lifted a hand not to silence her, but to stop myself from getting pulled into the old dance. You can say whatever story helps you sleep, I said. But it won't change the paperwork. Kay stepped forward. We will fight this. Layla spoke. Come as a judge. You can try, but ownership is clear. Serena rounded on Isla. Stay out of it. Leia's gaze didn't flinch. I stayed out of it for years. That's on me. Mom grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. Maxwell, please, she whispered. We didn't know it would get like this. Serena's under stress. Your dad's health. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her eyes. You clapped, I said quietly when she demanded my money like it was her right. Mom's lips trembled. I leaned in, voice low enough that only she and Dad could hear. I spent my whole life being told to bend. I said, I'm done. Serena slammed the keys on the table. Fine, then pay us out. If you want to sell, you owe us. I tilted my head. For what? For living here, she snapped. For improving it. 4. Wyla flipped a page. There's an itemized record here. Improvements were paid by Maxwell. Serena's eyes darted. Kyle's face tightened as he realized something he hadn't asked before. Wait, he said slowly to Serena. You told me your parents own this, Serena snapped. They do. Kyle's voice rose. They don't. Maxwell does. So what exactly have I been paying into when you said house fund? Serena's mouth opened searching. Mom jumped in frantic. Kyle, honey, this is a misunderstanding. Kyle stepped back, staring at Serena like she'd changed shape. My dad sank into his chair like the bones had given up, and Serena looked at me with pure hatred. You think you're so smart? She said, voice shaking. You think you're winning. I met her gaze. I'm not winning, I said. I'm leaving. The next morning, I moved. Not with drama, with boxes and tape and 2 friends from my stream community who showed up because they're the kind of people who actually mean it when they say, I got you. My phone blew up the whole time, Mom calling, Dad texting Serena, leaving voice notes that went from rage to bargaining to rage again. One of them, Serena's voice syrupy and fake, said, Maxwell, babe, I think we got off on the wrong foot. You know I love you. Triplets are just scary. Let's talk about what you can contribute. I deleted it mid-sentence. Leia came by my new place with coffee and a tired smile. I'm sorry, she said. I know, I replied. She looked around my townhouse. Small living room, plain walls, the kind of space that feels like a blank page. This fits you, she said. It fits my nervous system, I said, and that made her laugh softly. 2 days later, Kyle emailed me. A real email. Subject line, need clarity. It was short. He asked if I could confirm ownership and whether the sale was real. I forwarded him the listing information and the legal summary Leia had prepared. No commentary, just facts. 10 minutes later, Serena called, screaming, You're ruining my life! She shrieked the second I answered. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just said, this isn't revenge. This is reality. And I hung up. A week after that, Mom showed up at my door. No warning. She looked smaller than I remembered, like all her certainty had drained out and left only fear. She held a casserole dish like it could protect her. Maxwell, she whispered, please. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, feeling the boundary like a physical line. We can talk, I said, but not about money. Her eyes filled. Where are we supposed to go? You should have thought of that, I said quietly. Before you made me your plan, she flinched. And I hated that part of me that still wanted to soothe her. But soothing her would mean soothing the lie, so I didn't. I gave her one piece of practical help because I'm not cruel, and because boundaries aren't the same as punishment. I'll send you a list of rental resources, I said, and I'll give Dad a ride to his appointment next week if he needs it. Her face lifted with hope. Then I added firm, but you're not living off me anymore. Serena is not getting a house from me. And if you show up here uninvited again, I won't open the door. Her mouth trembled. Maxwell, she said, voice cracking. We're your parents. I nodded. And I'm your son, I said, not your bank. I closed the door gently. Not a slam, just a final click. That night, I filed the last paperwork, stopped automatic payments, changed every password tied to shared accounts, moved my mail, locked down my credit. I didn't do it with anger. I did it with the same calm focus I use when my stream gets chaotic and my chat starts spamming nonsense. Mute block, clean the noise. Serena posted about it online, of course. A vague, dramatic post about toxic family and men who abandon pregnant women. Some people ate it up. Most didn't, because the truth has a way of making lies look cheap, and because Kyle apparently wasn't thrilled about being cast as a side character in Serena's fantasy anymore. I used to think love meant endurance. That if I could just take more, bend more, pay more, eventually they'd see me. Eventually they'd respect me. But respect you have to purchase isn't respect. It's rent. And I was tired of paying for a place where I wasn't allowed to sit down. The lesson wasn't destroy them. The lesson was simpler and sharper. If someone only values you when you're useful, they don't value you. Now my boundaries are clean. Mom and Dad can contact me by email only. No surprise visits. Serena is blocked everywhere. No money, no favors, no access to my life through guilt. On the day the house went under contract, I printed one photo from childhood. Me and Serena on a couch, both grinning before everything hardened. I put it in a frame. Then I turned it face down on a shelf. Not because I hate her, because I'm done staring at a version of us that never existed. And at night, in my new place, I hear quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels lonely, the kind that feels like a lock finally turning. I stopped volunteering for a role that only existed to shrink me. This story is about recognizing when your family mistakes your generosity for their automatic right and finding clarity when you finally set boundaries. Maxwell is a 29-year-old streamer who funded his family's housing while being treated as their backup plan. He paid the down payment, closing costs, and mortgage on a house his family lived in, then was seated at the kids' table during Thanksgiving, while his sister announced he'd be buying her a bigger house for triplets. When she handed him keys and said, "Start looking this week," she wasn't asking. She was assigning his money without permission. The house wasn't a gift. It was property they assumed belonged to them. Maxwell put it in his name because his parents said it was temporary and didn't want their credit affected. For years he paid while they lived there, posted videos in their kitchen, and planned his financial future without consulting him. When his sister publicly demanded he fund her next house, calling him not even a real adult, she revealed what he'd been to them, someone whose success existed to fund their comfort. The moment wasn't the demand, it was everyone agreeing with it. His mother clapped, his father nodded, witnesses laughed. Maxwell's response revealing he'd listed the house and was moving wasn't dramatic. It was simply facts meeting reality. What this teaches when family only appreciates you while you're providing. The relationship has become one-sided. Maxwell's sister mocked his career, then expected him to fund her housing. His parents didn't acknowledge his contributions. They assumed more would always come. Support given under assumption rather than gratitude eventually runs out. For years, Maxwell paid expenses while being treated as less important than others at family gatherings. When he stopped suddenly, it became a crisis. Boundaries need action, not just words. Maxwell didn't just decline. He changed passwords, stopped payments, and moved to his own space. Clear actions speak when words get ignored. Financial generosity can't create genuine connection with people who only value what you provide. The family's response to losing the house showed they valued Maxwell's money, not Maxwell himself.